Grief is not just losing someone through death. We can lose someone by that relationship breakup. Can you imagine? You've been with that person from how many years? You've seen each other. You know that you're going to move life together. You've had children together. You've shared wonderful memories together. And you've always loved those memories or that experience to continue. And then boom, that person is gone. So you're going through a grief cycle where you've lost somebody so dear to you.
Arise and thrive.
Everyone, welcome to yet another session today where we'll be talking about how to emotionally detach after a breakup or a divorce. And this is one of the series, Welcome to Navigating Single Parenting, presented by Peggy Barre and Nelly Kwasungwi. Seems as if Peggy is having some issues with her connection. So we will just go ahead and see where it takes us to. Yeah. My name is Nelly Kwasungwi, a social worker, a transformational life coach, and a founder for Clarify That Uniqueness Limited and a director for Hand in Hand Community CIC. So over
All
to
right,
you, Peggy.
thank you, Nelly, about that. For anybody who doesn't know me, hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Peggy Barre, and I am the Empowerment Survivor Coach and founder of Arise and Thrive Academy. So today we are diving into a very interesting topic, actually, and a very touching one, a very personal topic as well for me, because I know what it meant to go through that emotional trauma before even trying to detach. So, yes, we're talking today about how to emotionally detach after a breakup or a divorce. And we all know that, trying to detach from a relationship after being in that relationship for so many years, enjoying life together, planning together, dreaming together, and then sometimes it just ends, and then you're trying to go through that whole process of detaching from that emotion or detaching from the other person emotionally. So today I think we're going to be talking about why emotional detachment is very, very important. We're going to be discussing from our own personal experiences some practical ways to release the past, and we're going to be talking on how to protect your peace or protect our peace while co-parenting, as well as building healthier emotional future. So without a further ado, I think we're going to be diving deep today, because I know, Nelly, emotion is your thing. So I'm sure we're going to be having a very, very interesting topic today. So Nelly, over to you.
Yeah. So, like Peggy has already mentioned, this is we have very personal experiences, and this is something we would like to share our experiences for others to learn and for us to learn from others as well, because we are all emotional beings. And when you are in a relationship, you are emotionally connected, or you invest emotionally in the other person or in the relationship. So then, when the relationship breaks up, how do you detach emotionally? Because it is the emotions that is keeping us connected. And from my perspective as a social worker, I have worked with a lot of families who have gone through domestic abuse, and I've heard things like, he or she has taken part of me with them, and I can't live without them. It's like a part of me has gone. So, all of that is the emotional attachment and emotional dependency that we had developed during the course of being in that relationship. However, for whatever reason, the relationship has ended. It means the persons involved need to detach from each other. And because it's a difficult journey to go through, it takes people different times to detach. Some people, unfortunately, never learn to detach and they continue in that emotional pain where they display in different relationships. For instance, if a relationship ends and you don't allow yourself time to heal emotionally, and straight away you run into a next relationship, you carry all the burden, all the attachments from the previous relationships into the new relationship. And you will be looking into that new relationship not as per the person that is in that relationship, but you will be comparing them with your previous relationship, which already it's a problem because you are disregarding the person for who they are and you are bringing up or you are comparing. You cannot say it loud, though eventually some of the things will come out. But the way you are feeling, the way you are thinking, you keep remembering your ex. So then you are not in the present moment to enjoy that relationship. And it's clear signs that that relationship will not be maintained and it will break up as well. So it is very essential for us to learn how to detach. When we talk of detachment, it's not about a revenge or punishment. When you detach, look from it from the healthy perspective. Because sometimes we say we detach because I want to punish that person. No, you are doing it to yourself. So that's the aspect that I'm talking about, healthy detachment. Because I run workshops on emotional awareness, I talk specifically about two emotions, and fear. So if you want to take any decision to detach or any action you want to take, ask yourself, is it out is that decision based on love or based on fear? But you need to take note that a lot of the times fear is disguised as love. So ask yourself if there's any aspect that makes you think and think again, know that there's an aspect of fear. You need to think again before you make a decision. Some of the tactics that we can use. But before we go there, Peggy, I just want to say, before we get into the tips to detach, there are some traps that keep us in that emotional cycle of non-detachment. So if we can talk a bit about that, I
Yeah,
would just start
absolutely.
like idolizing. We focus, we fantasize the good times that we had in the past and hoping that it will continue or someday in the future we might go back to that relationship. So when we idolize the past, it's a cycle that we are just maintaining in our heads and not, and that's a trap that will keep us to be stuck in that relationship emotionally. So then we struggle to detach and to move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. That is so, so true, Nelly. So, so true. And yes, so in fact, that trap, some of
So
the traps were already, in fact, in my head that we're going to talk about some traps there. You've already mentioned one of the main traps. But before we even dive into those traps, I just thought maybe, again, we could just talk about understanding emotional detachment and what happens in the brain when we go through that breakup and that divorce. Because when we go through, I'm just speaking from my own experience that when you go through that breakup and that divorce, one thing that is happening in our mind in terms of hormones that are released in our brain or in our blood cells, we're talking about the pain hormone, we're talking about the stress hormones, which is about, we're talking about oxytocin, we're talking about dopamine that is released in our bloodstreams. It's stressing us. We are stressed. We are feeling pain. We are feeling anger. We are feeling, in fact, everything that is going on in our body at that time. And those are some of the emotions, just like Nelly has mentioned. Those are some of the emotions that, first of all, we need to understand what is going in our body, and then try to start looking at how do we detach ourselves from that emotion, and also detach ourselves from what is producing those emotions. And then the second important thing, which I think many people that don't actually understand that they're going through, is the grief cycle, Nelly. And I'm sure Nelly, you would have you agree with me that we all go through that grief cycle when losing someone. Grief is not just losing someone through death. We can lose someone by that relationship breakup. Can you imagine? You've been with that person from how many years? You've seen each other. You know that you're going to move life together. You've had children together. You've shared wonderful memories together. And you've always loved those memories or that experience to continue. And then boom, that person is gone. So you're going through a grief cycle where you've lost somebody so dear to you. You're even, and that grief cycle, we're talking about the denial stage. Because for me, Nelly, for so many years, I denied that I was actually going through that breakup. I could not imagine myself, like, is this really true? Is it really happening? Am I really going to lose this person? Yes, even though I knew I was going through pain, emotional pain, but that cycle, when you're going through that cycle, you're actually refusing. In fact, you don't even remember the pain. That pain, like, is hiding somewhere, and you're just denying the process just because you can't actually bear yourself living without that person. And then you not just denying, the next stage of that grief cycle is anger. You're feeling anger, right? You're angry with yourself. You're angry with that person. You're angry with everybody around you. You're blaming yourself. And that is the moment where guilt starts to set in. When you're blaming yourself, you're thinking, well, if I should have done, maybe if I shouldn't have done, so you're going through a lot, is going through your mind. And then, of course, the next stage of that grief cycle, you're talking about bargaining. That is a moment that when some people start to bargain, you can either be bargaining with yourself or bargaining with the person, or start saying, maybe if we do this thing is going to work, or maybe if I just do this, it's going to work. And it's through this bargaining stage that sometimes, if we get it wrong, just like Nelly said, that is one of the cycle, that is one of the traps again, that you might get yourself into some of those traps and start doing things the wrong way, because you're trying to look for ways that, can it work, can it not work? And then, of course, we move now through the final stage, which is the depression. Yes, when you try the bargaining stage, and then things are not working, maybe you've tried to contact them, or maybe you've tried to do a little things to see, or maybe you've tried to, in my case, I try to call for meetings, with my ex, that we can talk things, we can reconcile, or maybe we can just iron out things together. Even when you get to a stage where you even begin to accept, like, say, you know what, please, even if I didn't do something, or if I did something, or if I did it without knowing, forgive me. But then you realize that sometimes that bargaining, you're bargaining with yourself, because they say it takes two to tango. If the other person is not willing as well, for you people to come together and then have a reconciliation cannot happen just one side. It needs to be on both sides. And then when you try that bargaining tactic and it doesn't work, that's when you move now into depression, when the reality starts to set in, that, hang on, you are really losing this person. That means this is it has come to an end. So you feel depressed. You feel depressed for many reasons. And then, of course, that depressive state, I always say, is very important as well, but it shouldn't be too long. You shouldn't go through that depressive period for too long. That is the depressive period where you can lock yourself in. For me, like I say in the previous show with Hat Nelly, I used to just drop my kids in school. I'll come back home, I'll just cry and cry and cry and cry myself out of pity. So it's that depressive state, that state where nothing feels interesting anymore, nothing bother. In fact, you don't even you've lost your own self. You don't even know who you are as a person. You're just living day by day. But again, like I said, that depressive state is very important. But the key there is not to linger on that stage for too long. And after that depressive state, that is where you need to start finding your own who self, who you are. And I'm sure, Nelly, that is where we can now start looking at, like you mentioned, sometimes that trap, those trap of idealizing, again, can come within those stages, of that cycle of grief. And then even some of the traps that you mentioned can even be stalking the person on social media, like, always stalking them on their pages. You want to know what is happening with them and all of that stages will come through. It might even be coming through the bargaining stage or even some of those grief cycle stages. But it's very, very important that we don't dwell on those traps, because those traps will actually prevent us from emotionally detaching from that person. Yeah. So Nelly, I don't know if that makes sense, and then how where we can proceed now into that journey of emotionally detaching ourselves from that person.
Yeah, thank you, Peggy. You've mentioned a number of points there. I just want to go back to the the loss, the grief.
Yeah.
Yes, when I mean grief, we go through the stages of grief in many different things,
Yeah.
and a relationship breakup is one of those things. And there is a natural process, like Peggy has mentioned, that we go through. However, unfortunately, a lot of people want quick fixes, which
Mhm.
means they don't allow the natural process of grieving to go through. So then,
Yeah.
majority of people are not aware of the different stages that Peggy has talked about. But
Mhm.
if you give yourself the permission to go through those stages, then you are in the process of healing. But if
Mhm.
you don't, then you'll just continue with that same cycle because you won't give yourself the time to learn the mistakes that you made in that relationship. Because though there are a lot of times we say it's the other person and not me, I'm perfect. But no, everyone plays a part in a relationship. If you were quiet and letting your partner to suppress you, it's because you gave them the permission to suppress you. So that is a part that you are playing or you play. It might be hard, but it is the truth. So is for you to give yourself time to go through the natural process of grief and loss. And during that period, you will be healing and releasing all like those chemicals that Peggy talked about. Though for me, I don't talk about those chemicals because to me that's big words for me. So I just go with the layman terms and I just ignore the oxytocin and dopamine and I ignore those ones. So basically, that is it.
Absolutely.
So
And
just
yeah.
to
Yeah.
So just to add that if you don't give yourself the time to go through that natural process, you will just keep lingering around the traps because you will not be able to differentiate whether it is the past or it is the future, and you'll just be going around, and the same thing will happen.
Absolutely. That is so true, Nelly. And I think what many people have done, which is normal to do as human beings, you mentioned something about revenge, right? Some people, some people naturally, or they think that by jumping into another relationship as soon as possible is going to make them heal from the previous one. And they jump into that relationship thinking that that is a way of consoling myself and also showing the other person that, hey, look at me, I've also moved on. But they forget that they haven't gone through that natural process of grief, just like you mentioned. They've skipped it. Some of them they've skipped it, or some of them go through it very, very quickly, which is good to go through it very, very quickly. But I always say, before you actually move into another relationship, have you emotionally detached, healthily detached from the previous one? That is a key question that we should be asking. Have we healthily, emotionally detached from the previous one? And you will know whether you've healthily, emotionally detached from a previous relationship by the way you interact with that person and the emotions that you generate within you when you interact with that person. When you see them on social media, or when you see them with, how do you feel? What are the emotions that are generate that is coming up within you? So these are some of the triggers, or these are some of the things that will tell you whether you've really emotionally healthily detached from that other person. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's just like you
I
said.
think
Yeah,
just
yeah,
just there, there's a lot to say there. So in a lot of situations, I've heard people say, when a relationship has ended, I don't have to speak to that person. Clearly, you haven't healed. And a majority of cases, that is what is happening. So
yeah,
if people come to me and they ask, why are you speaking with your ex or something like that? To me, it's like, why won't I? I have known that person for a number of years. We've
yeah.
got issues, yes, but it will not cancel the fact that I've not known him for such a long time. So why would I not talk to him? It depends now on me. What do I talk to him about? Or what is our conversation based around? And that is where healthy boundaries come in. Because
Absolutely.
if you refuse, like Peggy has said, if you meet your ex and you monitor yourself to notice the emotions that you are experiencing, if there's, I mean, you will know if you're healed or not. But a lot of people, they just want to avoid it. But I'm sorry to say this, but if you are avoiding to see the other person or to talk to the other person, my friend, you've not healed. You are still in the process, or probably you haven't even started the healing process. I'm sorry to say that, but that is the bitter truth.
That is true. It's absolutely true, Nelly. Do you know there's so many people that are refusing to accept that they haven't emotionally moved on? And when you talk to them, they're like, oh no, I've already moved on. Don't mind it, I moved on. But when you speak to them, when sometimes I observe when they're even talking to this person, and you can tell that they haven't emotional. And the thing is that sometimes, I don't know. There are some people who are naturally forgiving and naturally easy to let go. I'm one of those. I don't know whether it's a gift. I don't know whether it's a weakness or a strength. I don't know. Some people see it as a weakness. Some people see it as a strength. But I see it as a strength because you move on. You learn to move on and forgive, not out of anger, but the thing is that forgiveness, I don't know, there's a whole chapter in my book that I wrote about forgiveness, because for me, for once, it took me so many, I was asking myself, people were telling me that just let go, just forgive and forget, but I kept asking, how do you forgive and forget? How? So for me was the how. And when I was ruminating on it and eventually I found the how, it made things so easy for me. And the how was, I found forgiveness in gratitude. So that chapter on forgiveness, how do you forgive? It's just like gratitude is an acronym. You know, when you go through that acronym, you begin to feel gratitude for the other person. You begin to feel gratefulness in your heart for the other person, or gratefulness in your heart from the other person. Because for me, I felt like, I refuse to dwell on the negative. I will refuse to dwell on maybe what the person did to me that hurt me. But I also remember that it takes two to tango. If they hurt me, it's because I allow them to, just like you said, Nelly. Because the important thing sometimes is that we always put ourselves on the back and say we are the victim. But we refuse to realize that by keeping ourselves as perpetual victim, it takes away our power. It rips off from our power and it prevents us from the opportunity to grow. So for me, I saw it as the fact that, you know what, if I was hurt, or if they did not do, or if they hurt me, because I must have probably hurt them too. I'm a human being. I must have probably hurt them too in one way or another. And it's about realizing that, and then taking back that power and acknowledging that, you know what, I am not going to dwell on the negative of that person. I'm going to dwell on the positive of that person. Maybe they did what they did because of what they were going through, and maybe because their own childhood life or their own childhood experience was playing a massive role in their own lives. So that is where when you evaluate things like that, gratitude sets in. And then for me, I started looking at, I'm grateful going through what I went through, because looking at who I am today, I wouldn't have been this transformed version of me if I didn't go through what I went through. And when you think of that, gratitude increases the more. So when you see that person, you're not looking that person from the standpoint of pain, but you're seeing that person from the standpoint of gratitude and of gain. Like, you know what? Because of what you put me through, look at who I am today. And so I am grateful. So that is for me one of the ways of emotionally detaching, like healthily detaching from that person. So that is why, Nelly, people will not understand why you and I, or you will feel free to talk to your ex. You will be free to even attend their event. When they invite you, you attend, you show up, as if nothing happened. So that is the key. People will not understand. It's same as me, just like you said. Many people is like, I don't understand you. Why do you keep talking to this person? Or why do it's because I need to talk to that person. And it's because I am grateful that that person has helped me to become who I am today in myself and what I am doing in my life. So yeah, Nelly, I don't know, I just I can talk. I'm so
Yeah.
passionate about this because it's a key thing that is holding people back. But I just hope somebody can pick something today from our conversation. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Peggy. Forgiveness and gratitude, they are massive topics. And once you get these two, your life is different. Your life will never be the same. Because a lot of the times, let me talk about forgiveness. A lot of the times we say, I will forgive someone if they forgive something.
Mhm.
But the truth is, if you hold a grudge against someone, you are giving your power to that person.
Yeah.
Once you forgive them, you are releasing yourself of that burden. And when you want to forgive someone, you don't have to go to that person and declare that I've forgiven you. You
Mhm.
can do that from your heart of hearts and say, I forgive you.
Mhm.
Whether you remember or you don't remember, the past will never change.
Mhm.
But it is how you feel with whatever happened in the past. And that is
Mhm.
where my what I do as a transformational life coach, that is what I help people, because no one can ever change the past, but it's how we feel about the past.
Yeah.
So it's for you to look. Peggy said something about looking at that person from their own standpoint, because a lot of people did not grow up in a loving environment.
mm,
A lot of people grew up in tyranny, in chaotic households, in chaotic communities, and so on. But mind you, love is one of the strongest emotions that exists, and it comes naturally. So imagine this scenario, that love comes from within you. And if you have not learned how to express that emotion and you want to express it when it's come up, it is highly likely you will express it the wrong way.
mm,
And imagine what happens when you express love the wrong way. You are hurting the other person.
mm,
And if you who understands, you feel compassion for that other person because you might be able to understand where that person is coming from.
mm.
However, their aggressive behavior is not acceptable, and it is not your place as a spouse to heal, to help them to heal, because it is the work of their parents. And a spouse or a partner can help the other to heal if they accept that they are struggling and they want your support to go through that. But if they don't and you are forcing yourself, then you are making the situation even worse, and you will be hurting even more because you are seeing and noticing what that person is going through. Then you putting in your effort, that person is not taking it because they don't want to. They are not ready. They are still in denial. So that is not your job to do. So if it gets to that point where you put in all the efforts that you are trying because you want to maintain that relationship, but that person is not ready, then you can't keep on hurting yourself. And that is where you position, you put gratitude first, because that person has been your teacher. Because without that person, you wouldn't have gone through what you have gone through, and to build up yourself, build up that stability, build up that resilience to be who you are. Just like what Peggy said. So that relationship has been your teacher because you have learned. But there are still so many things that a lot of people need to learn about detaching emotionally from breakup or from relationships that have broken up. Because if you don't, you will be carrying it, and you'll realize that you leave one relationship, get to the other, and at the beginning it's always nice, but then somewhere down the line you say, oh, it's just the same like the previous. The problem is not the people, the problem is you, because you are carrying the same mentality, the same beliefs into all the other subsequent relationships because you did not give yourself the time to heal. So I'll stop there for now because I can keep on talking, Peggy.
No, that is so true. That is so true. That giving ourselves that time to heal is very, very important. So I think, yeah, that just takes us nicely into some of the tips or ways to emotionally detach from that person. And we're talking about emotional detachment. We talk about healthy emotional detachment. Because just like you say, some people would detach in an angry way, some people would detach helpfully. So I think the first thing you had already mentioned was about setting boundaries, right? Setting boundaries to with that person in the person, whether it's your ex or whoever. And setting boundaries, I don't know, we need, before we set boundaries, first of all, we need to have come to that point where, yes, we don't want to cut communication with that person. We want to set some healthy boundary. And again, a lot of sometimes cutting communication, there are cases where maybe cutting communication totally is important. If your life is at risk, like, you know what, maybe the authorities or whoever is supporting you have assessed that your life is at danger if you continue talking with that person, then yes, it is absolutely fine to cut complete 100% communication with that person, if by doing so it's going to maintain your sanity and it's also going to keep you and your kids, or if it's just yourself, safe, so but if the thing, if it has happened and you think that okay, you've assessed it, and you know what, maybe there are kids involved, and you think that maybe this relationship can still, there can be some level of communication in that relationship, maybe for the reason of one reason or the other, that is the point where yes, that communication can continue, but you need to set some boundaries. You need to put, in fact, I always say, design a contact plan, like what are the boundaries that you're going to set in terms of that communication, right? So it's about reducing, try to see how again you reduce your contact with them, you know because again, they always say communication builds emotion. If you're communicating with the person all the time, it either builds healthy emotion, or it brings up negative emotion, depending on the responses that that person is giving. And mind you, I know in most cases, even when you try to communicate with that other person, all you get is negative. That person is either insulting you, or that person is either calling you names, or that person is either blaming you, or pointing fingers at you, or just gaslighting you. So all of those things, those are the type of healthy communications. So the best thing is either to limit it and set healthy boundaries around that communication. What is it that you're going to respond? Because sometimes it's very tempting for us as well to start responding to those messages. So when you get to a point where you say, you know what, I'm going to set a healthy boundary here. I'm only going to respond to the messages that are relevant to the point, or to the topic of conversation that I wanted. Maybe if it is about children, or maybe if it's about a specific thing about a child or something, that conversation to focus only on that thing. So that person can be derailing and going left, right, center, bring it back to that particular thing that you want to talk about. Those are some of the healthy boundaries that you're setting. And sometimes setting healthy boundaries that they shouldn't contact you at certain times, you know. So again, I don't know, Nelly, do you want to talk about setting healthy boundaries? Because I
Yeah,
know we need to, yeah, it will talk, we will need to talk about even social media and all of that. And yeah, there are different ways how you can set healthy boundaries.
yeah. So setting healthy boundaries is very, very important. And when it goes down to communication, like Peggy has said, it is very common that
Mhm.
when you want to bring up a topic, like you ask a question, and all the response you get is you are da, 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 the name calling and the negative and the negative. If you are not, if you don't put that healthy boundary to say you will focus on the topic that you want to discuss about, be intentional in your communication. You are not friends and you are not enemies at the same time.
Mhm.
So you don't need to be communicating on a daily basis. That is a boundary that you need to set.
Yeah.
Communicate when it is absolutely important.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I would say, I don't know if it's in the African community that I have noticed, is child maintenance. Because when it comes to finances, a lot of parents take it as a target, especially for those who have children. They take it as a
Mhm.
target to say the whoever has the children, they are getting money off the government and things like that. So it is not their responsibility to give child maintenance. And they see the child maintenance as a lot of money that the government is giving for the upkeep of your child. So imagine this is your child, and you don't want to take up the financial responsibilities, but then you are proud to say, that is my child. the child is observing and they are taking their own actions. But you, as the person who wants to set that healthy boundaries, sometimes it might get to the point where if you know that when it comes to finances, that is an opening for all sorts of arguments, or they give you all sorts of replies, just stop it. Now, there's an easy route to go through child maintenance, the child maintenance service. But a lot of Africans, they don't want to go through that route because it costs them a lot. But they choose not to take care of their children financially, but they want the best out of their child. So that's something you can either stop completely and manage with what you've got to provide the best for your child or children, so that they don't grow up thinking that, oh, I'm an abandoned child, or I was not loved, because again that'll have a long-term consequence or impact on that child, because it's down to their mindset and their beliefs. So it's to put healthy boundaries. Peggy talked about social media, that we'll talk about that. So if it is necessary, you unfollow them on your social media page because you are not friends. Why do you need to be seeing their every moves? You don't need to be connected. So it will be okay to unfollow them and unfriend them on social media, because a lot of the times they will be seeing your post. They, one, they can be seeing your post, but on your part, if that is something that you want to take out of your list because you want to heal, yes, then take disconnect from them on social media, so you will know that whether they see you but you don't see them, it's not like you are hiding. You are not hiding, but it is a safety measure that you are taking, because self-care, you want to prioritize self-care.
Yeah. That is so true, Nelly. And one thing I've always said to people is that I don't know. Again, is the if we don't emotionally detach from that person, we are tempted to showcase something that is going to come back to hurt us. And I've seen many women when I speak to kind of women in the community, there's like, no, I'm going to show them that I'm this, I'm gonna that, I'm gonna that. And then what are you doing to yourself? You're creating emotion, you're creating opportunities to hurt yourself the more, because every time you do that, he or she is going to also show you on the other side that they have moved on, and maybe they're even hanging around with a better person than you. What is the need of that? There is no need for that. And like I always say, especially to ladies or to women, remember, it can also be to the man. But I always say to most of the ladies, remember that, because I know that majority of cases, the children will always be with the women, right? I always say, remember the burden that you have, those children. You don't have the time to be, I'm not saying that it's not good to also move on and be happy. Look, at that time, even you need to first of all concentrate on your healing and the healing of those children, because they will probably be going through that cycle of grief that we just mentioned as well. And sometimes as adult, we can easily go through that cycle of grief more than the children. And so it's very, very important to focus and also help them through that cycle as well. But if we jump into a relationship, we get in distraction. I'm not saying that it's not good to get into a relationship, but when we get into it, it's like a more of a we're distracted, from actually focusing on healing ourselves and healing our supporting the kids go through that process. And what I always say is that sometimes when we are focusing on seeing what is happening with that other person, like I say, it brings, because remember, a grief cycle, it doesn't mean that when you get to the end of it, it cannot restart. It's a cycle. Remember, it can go to the end and it will start all over again. So, and one thing may just trigger that cycle again. So if you have the way of actually making sure that you don't go through that cycle over and over and over, then I always say, you know what, cut off from whatever thing is happening with that person. Let them live their life and you leave yours. Like I always say, like Nelly have said, if you need to block them from social media, block them. And also on WhatsApp status, there is a option that you can actually bar them from seeing what is happening on your WhatsApp status. And you don't even need to be watching and seeing what is happening on their status. Some people cannot bear. No, just let them be, and so you can focus on your own healing and moving forward. When there is time for showing off, there'll be time for showing off. And when there is that time, you can show off knowing that you have healed, really, really healed emotionally, and that nothing can shake you from your healing. Yeah.
Again, just thinking, what are you showing off about? Okay, so let's move on to the next point, which is to reclaim your identity. So when you are in a relationship, because a lot of us, I'll say a lot of us, we don't know. We were never taught. We went to school, but they didn't teach us how to manage a relationship. So when
Mm,
we get into a relationship, we get lost. We don't even know who we are because we put our identity to wait over there, and then we pick
mm,
up on different identity. For instance, we do just the things that our partner, our husband, our wife does. We forget ours. Then, when we start having children, we pick up the role and identity of a mother, and then, but the
mhm,
person, us, picking up on all these other roles, we forget ourselves. So, the relationship breakdown is a period of reflection to reclaim our identity, to start asking, who am I? Because that is a very powerful question to remember who you are. Because when you pick up on different identities, you forget who you are. And that is when
mhm,
you have that inner conflict, because probably all the behavior or most of the behaviors that you were displaying does not align with your true identity, but because
mhm,
you use them as coping strategies. Now it's come to an end. What do? You need to go back from the beginning to start asking yourself, who am I? What did I like doing? And this is when in transformational life coaching, we go back to childhood because childhood plays a massive role in our lives and in our adulthood.
mhm,
Though, I mean, like many people that I've talked to, when I talk about their childhood, are like, oh, but that's been so many years ago. How is that related to my adulthood now? But yeah, we always go back to childhood because
mhm,
our adulthood is just a reflection of our childhood. And there's always a pattern when you look into it. There's always a pattern. So it's not just picking up on different identities on the way. We have everyone has an identity that is unique to them, and that is a higher
mhm,
self. And when, because of situations that we've gone through that are suppressed, we call that the inner child, because the inner child is there just being miserable and looking up to you, please just release me, but you are there picking up on other identities, and your real self is just there minimized down within you, which,
mhm.
yeah, we need to reclaim our identities. I'll stop there for now. Thanks.
Absolutely. That is so true, Nelly. Our identity is very important, because when it is that moment where you start to ask, when you ask yourself, for me, when I was going through that period, that is the moment I call it a mental rebirth. As I write in my book, it's a mental rebirth. I was trying to be born, like reborn in my mind, just to find out who really I was. Am I really that bad? Am I this? And then, of course, you get to find out who you really are, your true personality. And another important thing is, finding your identity, and then finding your purpose. Why were you born? Why were you really born, and were you actually just born to be in that relationship, and now you look at what you're going through? No, you were born for a unique purpose. It's about trying to find that unique purpose why you were born, because again, that will be an anchor for your growth. And another important thing is we need to start learning to find our values. What are our values in life? Because for me, I knew that there's, well, we all know that I'm loving, I'm kind, I am compassionate. These are all values, but there are some core values that are unique to you. It's important to find those core values, because when you find those core values, these core values will start determining the type of relationship you have, the way you talk to people, and where you are going. Because for me, when I found my values, I one of my values, in fact, I did not even know that one of my values was freedom. I knew I loved my freedom, but I did not know it could compound like my values. But then when I actually dwell on that freedom, freedom does not mean that, what, oh, let me just say what I want to say to people and hurt people anyhow. No. Freedom is just that, in like, knowing who I am, and knowing that I'm free. I'm free to do what I can do. I'm free to speak. I'm free to grow. I am free to seek wisdom. I'm free to seek knowledge. I'm free to this. So it's about, when you know your values, it will now guide the type of relationship you have, because people who you hang around, what kind of values do they have? What kind of principles do they have? And that is where your values will also help you to set boundaries as you move forward. Then, of course, another important thing that we need to start setting is goals. We need to start setting goals, because remember, we are moving forward now. Because detaching emotionally from somebody, we don't need to be stuck. Yes, we've detached. Hallelujah. We've detached emotionally from that person, but where are we going? What's the way forward? And the way forward is about setting goals. And this is the moment where vision board was so important for me, Nelly. I had to set my vision board. Where do I go from here? What are the goals that I want to, what is it that I want to see happen in my life? It can be 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 10 years, 20 years time. Where do I want to see myself? Whether in terms of my relationship or in terms of whichever thing that I want. It's about setting that vision board and setting tiny goals that can help you achieve that vision that you set on that vision board. When you do that, I tell you, you will not have the time to be focusing on that person. You will not even be bored at what is happening with their life, or whatever the thing they're doing. You will not have that time, because you are busy focusing on your vision, and every day your goal, whatever thing you're doing, matters to you achieving that your vision. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah, the vision board is really, really important. When you were talking, I was just thinking about one thing, that one fear, and it's a massive fear that people have, is that if a relationship breaks down, they fear to be alone.
Mm.
Yes, people fear to be alone. When you are alone, it doesn't mean that you are lonely.
Absolutely.
There's a lot that people need to learn about being alone, because when you are alone, this one is from a personal experience. Like being alone, being a single mom to 4 children in a country that it has taught me a lot, and this is where all these lessons has helped me to be independent.
Mhm.
Mind you, I had to start from afresh.
Yeah.
And I gave myself permission to start from nothing.
Hmm.
Now, I pay my bills, I do my everything. That is an independence that, yes, I grew up from a very young age. My parents taught me to be independent, but life also changes. So then,
Mhm.
after so many years, I had to start from scratch to learn to be independent. And if I did not go through what I went through, probably I wouldn't have learned to be independent the way I am. So it is okay to be alone, but focus on your healing. And when you
Yeah.
focus on your healing, redefine your narration. I know Peggy has said something earlier on. You are not a victim.
Yeah.
Or I'm not saying that you were not in the victim in that situation. You were, that's the past, but change the narration because that experience gave you a learning opportunity. Don't be
Mm-hmm.
stuck there. Push yourself forward and change that narrative because whatever is going on in your head that, oh, I was the victim, this was done to me, this was done to me. Now, change that narration. Ask
Mm-hmm.
yourself, what did I do in that relationship? Because
Mm-hmm.
you are not a saint. No one is a saint in a relationship that has broken down. Ask yourself and be honest. What did you contribute? Even if you chose to be silent, it doesn't mean that you did not contribute because when you were silent, you were complaining whatever was going on. So that is the role that you play. So it is really important for you to change the narrative and be looking forward that you need to move forward. Look for your purpose and align whatever you are doing with your purpose because you didn't come here on earth to live a comfortable life. This life is a marathon because the purpose, everyone has a purpose, and the main purpose is to make this world a better place than what we made it. But it will be different for different people. So take the time to find your own purpose, change your narrative, set a goal for yourself to move forward and stop being the victim or stop sitting there and waiting for someone to save you. You've got no one to save you. You are the only one to save yourself. So
So
start from anywhere that you find yourself.
that is so true, Nelly. That was so powerful. That is so true. Sometimes we feel like, you know what, if we like we can complain. It's not bad to complain and keep talking to people, but we can talk to the whole world as we want. But at the end of the day, the whole world cannot save us. It's that one you, it's you that can save yourself from that situation. And one thing you mentioned something then, Nelly, honesty is very, very important. It's scary, but it's important. Sometimes we are not honest with ourselves, but we don't realize that when we choose, when we really become honest with ourselves, that is a massive strategy to grow very, very quick. So another thing that I just wanted to touch on before we round up is how do we, because again, there are times that things will come. We are human. There are times that some emotions will come, like rush through us, maybe about that person or about something. It's very important that we also learn to practice breathing techniques. We learn to, breathe in, breathe out, whether it's counting back. There's some breathing techniques that you can do in terms when that stress arises, or maybe a thought, or you kind of had like a flashback and something triggers you. It's just learn to practice on breathing techniques that can take you off that anger or that stress and that pain at the moment. And again, I always say, for me, that thing, when it happens, I always remember on one thing: gratitude. I always put gratitude. I say be grateful, gratitude. Once I have that, it calms me down. And another important thing that I want to suggest is journaling. Journaling is a massive way of us to grow, like releasing those pain. Yes, maybe sometimes we have the flashback and all of this. We journal them, we write them down, write those things down. How are you feeling? Sometimes you just like, what are the three things that makes you happy today? what are the lessons or something that maybe trigger you today, or you did not react well? Why didn't you react well? It's about journaling. And journaling is the best way to self-awareness. We begin to actually see ourselves written before us. You can actually express how you felt, and by you reading that, it even makes you more aware of who you are and what you're going through and how you can make yourself better. And another thing that I just wanted to add is that we need to create a community and a supportive system as we move forward. As we when we emotionally detach from that person, we need to find a healthy a community. And finding a healthy community is very, very important. As Nelly and I have said this before in our previous shows, be mindful of the type of people that you associate with at this very moment in your life when you're going through that period of detachment. Be mindful of the kind of people you associate with, the kind of people you talk to. So if there's nobody, if there are people who are not going to support you in the right way, then please don't even waste your time going, because those people can even make you to slip back into that cycle of grief. So whether you want to go with professionals, talk to people like Nelly, who is a transformational coach, or maybe find workshop, or find, places where you can attend to grow. Meet with like-minded people who can understand your perspective and understand what you're going through. In that way, they can support you better in that journey, through that journey of emotional detachment. So yes, I think that is just what I just wanted to add, Nelly.
Yeah, just to add there, I would say when you are going through this period of emotional detachment, it's okay to be alone.
Mhm,
But you need to be very mindful of the thoughts that go through your mind, because it is said everything begins with a thought. And like Peggy has talked about, the breathing and the journaling, when you take out the information that is in your head to something physical, like in a book, when you've written that down or you've recorded it in your on your phone, you are giving your mind space. And
mhm,
because your mind is very creative, when you let whatever information to dwell in your mind, it magnifies it.
mhm.
And when it magnifies it, it attracts what it magnifies. So it is okay to express those emotions, to get out of your system, to give space for more creative, more meaningful messages. And when you have those thoughts, like sometimes Peggy talked about flashbacks, or some thoughts will just come into your mind and you're thinking, oh, why did that come up? So the mind comes up with such information when it signals it signals to you that you have the resources to deal with that. It's not
Mhm.
a coincidence. It is when it knows that you have the resources to deal with that. But sometimes it might be very frightening for us, that why has this come up? If you experience that, is to stop, take a pause, ask yourself what triggered that thought, because it will
Mm.
come from somewhere. It's not just random. But if you don't take the time to look within, you will never understand why that came. Ask
Yeah.
yourself, why did that come up? Why are you feeling that way? Where is it showing up in your body? Because emotion shows up somewhere in the body.
Mhm.
So it's for you to find that down, and all of it is around awareness. So that if you identify that now, and next time it comes again, you say, aha, I know where that is coming from. And then
Yeah.
already being aware is the first step to healing, because when you identify it, or when you become aware of it, you accept it, and then you know what action to take, so that feeling or that emotion doesn't dominate you. So you will take an action. If that comes again, what do you do to detach emotionally? Probably the thought came about you thinking about this person, you were da, da, da. What do you do? So always give yourself permission to heal.
That is so true. That is so true. And I think that really brings it nicely to the end. I think we've talked. It was a hectic topic today, isn't it, Nelly? It was really,
Yeah.
really,
Yeah.
yeah, really, really, really resourceful. And I hope that somebody picks up something. Like I always say, when Nelly and I come here, we just talk raw. We talk from the heart. We've been through it, we've experienced it. But the beauty is that we speak from the standpoint of growth, which is important. Because we don't speak from the standpoint of pain or victim, right? It's about growth. It's about moving. We are survivors. We're survivors. And when you see yourself as a survivors, you see you have the power. You're empowering yourself. So that is the direction where we come from. So whether you're watching later, and if you think that you've got a comment to put, please put a comment on there. Anything that, like, Nelly, we always say, what, come and be a guest on the show. Come and be part of us. Let us have this conversation together. So thank you so much for watching. And we are going to be coming again in 2 weeks' time on another topic. If you think that you've got a topic that you want us to talk about, drop it in the comments, because we're going to, yes, be glad to see that topic and then talk about it. Apart from that, Nelly, is there anything you want to say before we close?
I just want to thank you all. And like Peggy has said, when we come here, we come just bare, we come raw, and we just talk about what comes up, because we are not here to show off. We are still struggling. We are still going through the healing, because it's never ending. And we
Mhm.
look up to you to learn from you, because this life is about sharing and also learning. So
Mhm.
that's why we keep on saying, please, 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 if you have any topic that you want us to talk about, contact us. If you want to be on this panel, contact us as well. Because as we are doing this, we are learning. Because when Peggy is saying something, I'm like, oh yeah. When I'm saying something, Peggy is like, oh, that's something I could do, I can do differently. So we
Mhm.
are learning as we're talking on this show.
Yeah.
And so we would like that from you as well, because we are very open to learning. And yeah, we just want to be better people. We are comparing ourselves to who we were at the start of this show to now, because I have learned, and I know Peggy has learned as well. We don't
Yeah.
compare with anyone, and we will never we will not compare with anyone. We will
Yeah.
compare with ourselves, the way we were a few hours ago, and we want to move forward.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much, and we look forward to reading your comments. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, and stay blessed and be emotionally, in fact, be healthily emotionally detached, because you know what? You deserve it. You deserve it. So thank you so much and have a blessed night. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. 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 Bye.
Born for a purpose. I was born for fulfillment. I was born to shine and not to be abused.